Hey everyone, Leo with Dreaming Tree, and welcome to the assembly video for our flower basket. I've got all the pieces cut out here in front of me, as should you. And this one's relatively simple. You can see that we have each of the petals separated. And I actually started inking the face, but then realized that once we curl this back, you're really only going to see the inside part of the petal. And then we're going to fill this in with crinkle fill or paper grass, whatever you want to call it. So there's really no need to go all the way down here. Saves you on paper and saves you on time. So what we're going to do, you'll notice that these are all numbered 1, 2, these are Roman numerals 3. The number 4 is a little bit different. It's 4 marks in the shape of a square or a circle. 5 is the same thing, the little square with the 1 next to it. And 6 is the same, it just has a Roman numeral 2 after the little square. So we want to do this in order, and it's important because we want the holes for the brads to be on opposite sides, which is mostly why, actually primarily why we included the numbering system. So let's just get started here, and we're going to take piece number 1 and connect it to piece number 2. We just want to make sure that this horizontal score mark is on the same plane as the one next to it, just so that everything comes out looking good. And let's go ahead and begin applying our glue to tab number 1. And you want to try to cover that entire tab. It's going to keep it nice and sturdy and secure. But I do want to take and spread that glue out to the very edge of the inside part of the tab. Okay, so we'll grab piece number 2, line it up as accurately as possible, all the way up to the very edge. You want to kind of butt that up against, almost up against that little score mark there. You can actually do this flat right now. Okay, so that's what that's going to look like. And we can either start curling this now, or you can do it later. I don't really think it's going to make a difference. But what we can do is actually use our table to help us with that. So if you place your dowel right at this point here, and then just lift this up about almost 90 degrees, it'll start to kind of give it a little bit of a curve. Now I want to ultimately curve this back a lot more. And once we have it somewhat curved, you can kind of take it and just roll it back very gently. You don't want to crease the paper by being too rough with it. You want to try to keep it as smooth looking as possible. Okay, so that's roughly what it's going to look like. Again, you can do this now, you can do it later. I think we're just going to wait until we have everything put together to start curling these back. But you can see what we're looking for here, and you can see how beautiful that inking is. That definitely adds some nice dimension to it. All right, so anyway, I'm going to put glue on tab number 2, just like we did with tab number 1. Spread that out, just like that. And I can definitely just put this down flat while we're able to. You might as well. So the only downfall of curling before we get this thing assembled is that it makes it a little tougher to get the sections aligned flat on your table. So you may want to wait until after everything is put together. Okay, so I'm going to keep on cruising here. Put glue on tab number 3, just like we did. A little extra towards the very edge. Spread that out. Okay. Then grab piece number 4. I would definitely recommend inking everything if you plan on inking, which you probably should. I would recommend doing that before gluing everything in place. Otherwise, it's going to be a lot harder to ink things when everything is put together. I'm going to fold it over onto itself so I can make sure that it's aligned correctly. That is looking good. Okay. And next up, tab number 4. A little bit extra towards the edge there so we can spread that out nice and thin. There we go. We'll take piece number 5 and line that up right there. Press that down into place. can fold it over onto itself, as I mentioned. And you can see these tabs here, they should sit perfectly on top of each other if you have it aligned correctly. And there we go. Okay, so I'm moving kind of quick here, but that's because I'm using just the right amount of glue, not overdoing it on the glue. It should set pretty quick. It's not completely dry, but it's dry enough to where I can feel confident moving this thing around and moving on to the next section. Okay, just get that nice and aligned. Press that down into place. And fold it over onto itself. Check the tabs, looks good. Press that down. And now we have them all connected. Now we can close it up like this. And you can see we've basically built a big flower. And the only thing left at this point is to curl those petals back. Now we do have a little decorative element that's going to go on the bottom. So we're not quite done yet, but that's okay. Okay, here we go. Putting glue on tab 6. And this one, you can technically, I think you could do this flat too. Yeah, you can. So you can see the glue on the tab. I kind of just flattening that out. That's where I train the petal. And it doesn't look like I was completely on as far as the alignment the entire time, which is okay. It's still going to come out good. But you can certainly fold it over onto itself like this. Actually, yeah, it looks pretty good. The whole thing does fold completely flat at this point. There we go. Okay, that seam is ready to go, and it's gonna really pop once we pull those out. Okay, so now we need to put the bottom on so it can hold on to its shape. Now we have two of these. One has a little L cut into it. That's gonna go on the inside. This part is going on the outside. And what we want to do first is anchor this to just one of the tabs. So pick a tab, doesn't matter which one. I'm just going to grab this one here, throw some glue on it. Let's get that glue out to the very edge, just like we've been doing. And then we want to take this and get that aligned nice and center, right up to the very edge. It might be, because of the odd shape of the petals, it's not going to sit completely flat. It might move around a little bit. Just do your best to get that aligned as accurately as you can while that glue is still wet. And grab that tab if you need to from behind for some additional leverage. Scooch it left or right, whichever way you need to go. I'm going to put that flat down on my surface so I can press down on the tab from the inside, help that glue really seep in there. And that looks really good. We'll rotate it around, move this tab out of the way, and now we're going to close this up. Before I even get into that, when we go to close it, we're going to focus on getting this side aligned with this side first, like this. Okay, and then if we need to, we can kind of take and nudge the other two walls over a little bit, in or out, depending on how things kind of fall into place for us. But first off, let's get a little bit of glue on here. You can go a little bit heavier on the glue for this since we have all of these sides to work on, and we don't want that glue to dry prematurely. So I'm going a little bit heavier on the glue, and it's a little wonky because it's six-sided. That's okay, just have to work with it. Spread that glue out to the very edge. And this one, I went a little light on that one, that's okay. You can always go back in and fix it, and sometimes I almost hope that things don't work out perfectly the first time so I can show you how to fix things as you go, okay? So as I mentioned before I put the glue down, we're gonna flip this down and focus on this side here first. Get that centered. Get that centered and flush. There we go, and by doing that, we typically, not always, typically get the other sides to just kind of magically align. That side looks good. This side, I'm going to need to kind of push the wall out a little bit. And I'm going to just use my surface to help me a little bit here. There we go. Just want to get that aligned. We can always go in and fill in any gaps. I think we're going to have a few little gaps here maybe more than a few, and that's okay. Like I said, this six-sided shape sometimes can be a little bit of a challenge, but I'll show you how to fix it. As long as everything looks nice and flush, we're gonna be in good shape. Okay, so I have a major gap there, and that's okay. I'm gonna grab a scrap piece of paper, just like this one. That's what I do with my scraps. I just kind of cut them into little squares or rectangles. Throw a little bit of glue right at the very edge of that, and just pop it right in between that little area that has a gap. And then you can press that down and hold it. And it may help to use your table at this point to really get that. And if you want to get really even more precise, use a dowel and get it right up against that score mark and press down in there. You're not going to get any more accurate than if you were to use a little dowel like this, pushing it right against that very corner. And we'll see how that turns out here in a second. Perfect, look at that. Now I still have a gap there, and that's okay. Might have to go around and just kind of clean it up. This six-sided wonky shape is, I rarely ever get that on there perfectly. So don't feel bad if you're not getting it on there perfectly either. Now with this little corner here, I can just hold that with my finger. I don't think I even need to use the table. And ultimately, we're just looking to make sure that we have a nice clean bottom. I've been saying that a lot with the new baby in the house. Gotta have a nice clean bottom. Okay, there we go. Nice and seamless looking. Beautiful. And I'll just kind of pan around and take a look at the rest of it, see if there are any more gaps, and just kind of clean up those little gaps there. Okay, just kind of taking a look at the base. Everything looks nice and flush. So now what we can do is take a little bit of glue, place it around the tabs, a little bit on the inside, and this is where we can take this piece and just pop it right in the center. That's going to help reinforce the bottom and hide those tabs, make it a little more sturdy. Okay, there we go. And now it's time to put our little elements on the side there. So we have two of these, okay? And these are just gonna go around the bottom. You wanna make sure that this stays nice and flush with the bottom all the way around. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna begin by gluing just the center to one of the sides, and then we'll get the other two sides in place. And we wanna make sure that this sits nice and flat up against the surface of our basket. And we kind of broke this down into little sections because working on all these different sides at the same time, because there's a little bit of a curve, it's not straight up and down, this thing kind of curves up a little bit, it just makes it a lot easier to work with individual sides. So I'll show you what I mean here in a second. But this, you want to place that on there, use the little score marks. You want the bottom of this to be flush with the bottom of the actual structure. And I'm using a silver foil here, so I need to be very careful that I don't have any glue on my fingers. I'll press that down very gently. Make sure it's making good contact. Nice and flush here. You can kind of feel it with your finger. Now you may not be using a silver foil like I am. You might just be using cardstock, and that's totally fine. Just want to make sure that you have that nice and flush there. So now what we'll do is we'll peel this back. Now for me, this is so much more rigid, so I have to be very careful. I'm going to peel this back, apply our glue to this side. You could do the other side too, it doesn't matter. You can pick whichever side you want to start with. And we're just going to glue this in place. Maybe just get a little bit of glue inside that little flower. You don't have to cover every single inch of it. And when you bring this over, just make sure again that it stays flush with the very bottom of the basket. Okay, that's our main priority here. Okay, and then you can push in from the inside to help this whole shape take hold. And it should end up being pretty flush with that edge there. Looks good. There we go. And now I'll take and peel this side back and do the same thing. Apply our glue here. And again, just ensuring that it stays flush with the bottom there. Just get that lined up nicely. And there we go. Okay, so we've got one half of it in place. Now we're gonna do the same thing on the other half. We're gonna start with the center of this element, get that in place. So you don't wanna start here. We've got these three sides that we need to cover. We're gonna start in the center with the center of this. And that's gonna go on just like we did the other side. Okay, so let's flip this over, start applying our glue. And again, try to cover as much of that area as you can without caking it with a ton of glue. If you're using foil, you have a few extra moments to apply and set. If you're using cardstock, you're gonna have to move a little bit quicker. And again, pop that on there. Use the folds as your guides. It should sit right on that panel there, or on that structure perfectly. Make sure it's flush with the bottom. Nice and straight. Use your fingers to kind of feel for that flush feeling. And then you can press down. I'm going to press down from the inside so I don't blemish the foil. And that looks great. Okay, and you can see here pretty much meets perfectly. And here pretty much meets perfectly as well. I'm not overly concerned about that because we have some green panels that are going to go on top of that. And those we engineered to be seamless, so they'll kind of cover any little gaps we may have, and I'll show you how that works in a second. So this process is slightly forgiving, but don't mess up too bad. I'm gonna try to be in the ballpark. Okay, so that one's gonna go right there, again making sure it's nice and flush. And we'll press that into place. I'm gonna use my surface to help me press that into place. There we go. Beautiful. And that just leaves one more. Let's peel this back just gently. And let's apply our glue. Try to cover as much of that as you can. Very easy on the glue here, don't overdo it. And just a little bit on that floral element. Pull that over, again, making sure it's nice and flush at the bottom, very gentle. Okay, and I'm gonna put that down on my surface. Okay, so step one is done. Now we have another layer that's gonna go on top of that. It's made up of these green pieces. And one thing to note, you'll notice that this piece has two sets of tabs. Okay, so there's another piece that looks like this that has one tab, okay? But you want to find the one that has two tabs. We're actually going to start with this one. Okay, it doesn't really matter where you start. There's, I think, 3 of them that look like that. Yeah, we're just going to start here. Okay, and that's going to go right on top of this one like so. And again, we want to make sure that we keep it flush so that we have a little bits of the underneath, the color underneath popping through. Okay, so you see what I mean there? And we want to try to get that aligned as accurately as possible on top of that other layer. Okay, so again, starting with the piece with the 2 tabs, make sure you fold those over. And I wouldn't be overly concerned about getting the tabs glued down just yet. Let's focus on just getting the face of this in place first. Okay, so now I'm gluing cardstock onto foil, which for me is going to be a little more challenging. You don't have to use foil, but of course we have to really go all out here. I wanted to add a little bit of bling to it. And this little area here by the flowers, just got to be very careful there if you are using foil. Okay, so I'm going to get this on. I can hold it by the tabs since there's no glue on there. And I'm going to try to get it exactly where it needs to be my first go around here. Just like that. And then this little piece, these little individual little pieces are going to move freely. So if you need to kind of nudge them a little bit, they should be able to move individually. There we go. Okay, perfect. All right, so I'm going to let that set for a second because when you're gluing cardstock or pattern paper onto foil, it takes it a few extra moments to really set. It can still kind of jiggle and wiggle around on you. So now what I do is take and fold back the tab on the right and apply a little bit of glue to it. Just very easy. And then we're going to take it and fold it over onto that surface, and it should match up with the design on this face pretty much dead on. Okay, and just hold that in place for a second. There we go. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to find the pattern that fits this, which is this one here, and that's going to go right on top there. So now you remember what I said about if you have any little gaps, this is going to fill those in because of that little tab that crosses over. Okay, so we're going to apply this one now onto this, and we have a tab here ready to go for the other side. So let's start with the glue here, nice and easy. Just try to get glue into little spots here and there on the leaves and so on. Don't overdo it. A lot of little details, but that's okay. All right, and I'm going to try to get it right in where it needs to be. First go around. There we go. Whoops. And voila. Just like that. Keep holding that down. Kind of give it a little nudge if you need to. You can always go back and kind of ink the edges a little bit. This is a white core pattern paper, which when you cut, you can see little bits of white, and there's really nothing that you can do to get around that. You can try to ink every little inch of this, but again, trying to ink in these little detailed areas is just, that is not fun. So I don't think anyone's really going to notice that it's not inked on every single inch of it. All right, so now we have this tab here. We can pull it back so we can apply our glue to this tab, and we'll glue that down. Again, it's going to continue making this nice and seamless looking all the way around. And we'll press that down into place. Looks good. So far, so good. There we go. Okay. So now we need to find the element that fits here, and that's this one here. Okay, you can see how nice that fits. And this is the one that has the one tab on the side. So let's flip this over and start applying our glue. Focus the glue around the perimeter, and then just a few little dots here and there on the inside with all the detail. Okay, and let's match that up as accurately as we can onto the design. There we go. Perfect. There we go. Okay, just hold that in place for a moment. It should be nice and flush with the bottom, and it is. And keep on pressing that down. And just a few more to go here. And look at that. That is looking awesome. Okay, so I'm going to just kind of keep my hand on that while I peel this tab back, because I do need to apply a little bit of glue onto this tab. And it's going to look nice and seamless. Okay. We'll fold that over right onto this piece here, and everything is matching up perfectly. There's some wonderful engineering. All right, so now let's find this piece here. Again, just one tab on the side, and that's going to go like this, just like that. Okay, so let's grab our glue. Again, focusing that glue around the perimeter mostly. And of course, we've got these little tiny floral elements here. I want to get a little bit of glue on that, a little bit around the leaf, and onto the flower. Okay, very carefully pop that into position. Just line it up. I would do the bottom first, and work your way up the sides. And then, again, these little sections here, they kind of move around independently for the most part because they have that long little stem there. And that will get that into place. There we go. You can push from the inside too if you need a little extra leverage. Perfect. And then we can take this and just peel it back. Apply our glue right there. And a little bit of it's coming off, but that's okay. This tab will pop it back into place and hold it where it needs to be. And there we go, look at that. So far it's going on perfectly. And again, nice and seamless, despite the fact that that first layer had a few tiny little gaps. And that could, again, be because of the thickness of the paper that I'm using, which is probably what's happening. Okay, so we've got this piece going on next. Okay, and again, we've got those two little tiny guys up there, so we want to be careful not to tear those. Okay, work that glue around the perimeter, up the leaf, get a little bit on these little loops. I'm going to call those, I don't know what I'm going to call them. I'll call them dandelions. They could be whatever you want them to be. Okay, line that up. Should sit right on there perfectly. There we go, look at that. Beautiful. I need to nudge that up a tiny bit and just hold that in place. Nice and flush on the bottom. You'll notice as you're working here, you'll see these little areas that have, they have some little markers, and that's where our little 3D flowers are going to go. And I just noticed something here that I have one area here that I didn't get enough glue on, and that's okay, because what we can do is just grab a scrap piece of paper, throw a little bit of glue right on the corner of it, and where is it? Just this little area right here. I'm just going to poke this in between these two layers and just paint a little glue right there where it needs it. And then I can press down and hold it, and it will stay in place for me. And that just leaves this last little guy here. And this last little guy, you'll see we have tab here, tab here. This last piece has no tabs at all. It's going to go right on there just like that, and beautifully fits like a puzzle and is ready to go. Okay, so let's do that. Let's get this last piece in place. A little bit on the little flower there. And I noticed something here. I've got a little part that didn't pop off the mat. Just need to poke that out. Okay, and while I did that, of course, my glue probably started to dry out a little bit, so I'm going to reapply a little bit more. There we go. And this is just going to go right on here. Just match that up with the design, nice and flush on the bottom, and press that into place. And there we go. Perfectly seamless. We got the rose, or I guess that looks like a rose. I call it a rose. Got the leaves, little flowers here and there. So as I mentioned now, we do have a series of little flowers that you can use as little embellishments for this, give it some dimension. And that's what, first off, one thing I want to mention, little areas here where you have this shadow element, that's where these guys are going to go, okay? And that's not the only place they'll go, but that's one of them. And when you have an area like that, it's going to use the big flower that's like this, because we have, let me show you here, let me just lay these out so you can see them all. We have a total of 4 of these large ones, and we have 2 small ones, and then these little guys, we have a total of 2, 4, 6, 8 of them, and those are just going to go in various parts here, and I'll show you where those will go. You could technically put them wherever you'd like, but I'll show you where we designed them to go, so to speak. Okay, now for these little flowers here, these big ones, you can take like a very thin hibachi stick and just place it at the base of the petal, lift it up about 90 degrees, and then push the dowel through very gently. You don't want to rip the petal off, but that's going to give it a little bit of curl and dimension so it stands out and is not so flat. Also, what you could do, instead of using a dowel, you could place this between your 3 fingers here and just kind of curl it towards you like that. Now that's gonna make it stand out. It's gonna be a little more pointy and not as round. So I'm gonna go with the round option here by using the dowel. Okay, and I did just barely hit the tips of these little flowers with a little bit of ink, just because I'm a little wacky when it comes to the ink, and I love adding it wherever I can. Now with these even smaller petals, it may just be easier to take and grab the tip of this petal and just curl it towards you, like that. Okay, and then we can kind of twirl it in our fingers. And as far as the little guys go there, there's also other things you can do to form flowers. And I haven't done it in a while, but maybe this would be a good time to do it since it's a really small flower. I'll show you two different ways of doing it. Let's just start with, let's just get these done real quick. And by the way, don't forget, every little flower is an opportunity to use a rhinestone or a pearl. So once you get these glued down, you have those little centers where you can get your bling out and add an additional embellishment to the center of the flower. And I would glue that down, and I would not use the built-in sticky backing on any of your bling because it will eventually fail and they'll come crashing down. Okay, so let me curl the rest of these, and I'll show you what you can do with the little guys here. So with these little guys, you can curl them like this by just kind of pushing down on the center and just twisting them around in your finger to give them a little dimension. You can see how they sit up like that. You can try with a very thin hibachi skewer to curl them in. Gives it a little bit of a different look. I don't think it's that noticeable though, so I don't know if you really want to spend the time doing that. You might just want to find the path of least resistance. And then also there is, they make these tools for flower making. It's a guy like this. Just has a little ball on the end of it, and I'm going to need to get my mouse pad, but I'll show you what you can do. I haven't done this method in quite some time, but it's an option. You got to have something that has a little bit of give to it, and you can put your petal on there, and just by doing little circles in the center, it forces it to kind of curl up. Okay, so that's an option. It's pretty quick actually, so another fun little way of accomplishing pretty much the same thing. So I'll just do that real quick since I haven't done it in a while. Hopefully we'll do more of that sort of thing in the future. Okay, and just doing small little circles in the center of the flower. And that's essentially just training the paper up, pushing in the fibers like that. There we go. Okay, so let me show you where all these flowers are going to go. I'll get this out of the way for a second. Okay, so let's start with this shape here, or this design here. You've got a little marker right there for a small flower. You can actually just pop your glue right in between the little marker, grab a flower, and just pop it right into place. Use the blunt end of your hibachi stick to kind of give it an extra push. We also have another little marker here. So anywhere you see little markers like that, that's an indicator for one of these purple flowers. In my case, purple. You might have a different color, and that's okay. Before we go too far here, again, I want to kind of organize these flowers by size, and that one looks a little bit smaller. So I got three different sizes of this white flower. Okay, and we're going to go with the large one here. Okay, so I don't think we have a marker on there, but I'm just going to throw a little dot of glue right about there. Okay, we'll take a large one, and we want one of the petals pointing up where that little shadow element is, just like that. Okay, so we've got three on that side. Now we'll turn it over here to the next side, and we have a little marker here. We'll throw a white one there. We'll go with the medium-sized one there. Just pop that right there. Just use your hibachi stick to push that into place. Okay, and we have another little marker here. I'll drop a dot of glue right there, and grab my little pink flower, push that into place. Definitely helps to use a hibachi stick. Okay, so that's going to do it for that one. Now we'll scoot over here where we have a little marker here. And I'm going to grab another small flower for that one. Pop that right there. Not a big deal. All right, we're going to go with a medium-sized one. Actually, let's go with a small one here. Got a little dot of glue right here on that set of markers. And we'll put a small one here. Oops, there we go. Okay, we'll rotate that over to this side here with the rose design. And here we're going to put a little dot here for a tiny little flower. Okay, get my hibachi stick, press that down. And we're going to go with a large one here in this element. So actually for this one, I'm going to put the dot of glue on the back of this because I don't have a marker for that one. I'm going to make sure that I get it in the right spot, just like that. And then we have a little tiny marker here for another little guy. Pop that into place, like so. And we'll rotate it. I'm gonna go here. We'll get a big one here. There's a little set of markers there. Flatten that out just a tiny bit. And pop that guy there. And then another set of markers here. A little drop. Grab a tiny guy. Pop them on there. Give it a little push. And the last side here. We have one set of markers here. And that's for our last little guy. And then finally, one little marker there for our final white flower. That was hit with a little bit of pink. Again, don't forget, as I mentioned, every flower center is an opportunity to use some bling. So once this is all dry and set, look how beautiful that looks. Okay. All right, so next, what we're gonna do, before we start fiddling with the training on this, which we'll get to here in just a second, I want to put some other flowers together. Okay, so what we can do here, we have these purple flowers. You're gonna need a set, one large, one small for each side. And this is gonna cover up the handle, or where the handle goes, and the brad's gonna go through it. It's gonna make it look nice. So find yourself a nice skinny dowel, and we're gonna do the same thing to these petals. So you can do it this way. Place the petal between your finger and the dowel, lift it up about 90 degrees, and run that dowel through. Okay. Just do that to all of the petals. And we are going to glue these together. Ultimately, it'll be held in place with the brad, so we don't even need to use any glue to hold this in place. Okay, there we go. And then finally, let's take and, what do we got here? There we go. What we'll do is apply some glue to the back of the smaller one. I want the smaller one on top of the larger one, and we're going to offset it so that the petals are not on top of each other. So you don't want to go like this. You want to offset it, just rotate it ever so slightly. Keep the holes on top of each other so you can see clear right through it. And then just connect the two. Put the smaller one on top of the larger one. There we go. And I was going to curl it with my little tool, but I just realized that I don't even need to do that. It's just fine the way it is. Okay, so there's one flower, and then we'll do the next one here. Throw a little bit of glue on the back. I have a little bit too much on there. And again, let's offset it. Press that down, and then you can kind of pull these little petals, the smaller ones, up towards you to create a little more separation between the two layers. Okay, so that's that. And now, I think now might be a good time to start training these petals out and just kind of get them into their final little destination. Now, you want to be careful when you're training these. You don't want to overdo it, because you may end up ripping it. And I would probably start very easy and just very slowly loosen those fibers of the paper. You might have to do it a dozen or so times, and then very gently take and pull that down. Okay. Okay. Now, once you have them somewhat trained, very gently like this, I'm going to do one more thing to really make that curve more pronounced, because I really want it to curve here at the base, because I want the flower to look like it's opening up. Okay, so we'll do this a few times just to get this going. And then what you can do is take a dowel. This is almost like a 1/2 inch dowel. It's like 3/8 inch maybe, just about a 1/2 inch. I'm going to take it, place it right at the base above where it was glued, and very slowly just kind of wrap it around the dowel, just at that base. You can kind of work your way up a little bit. Okay, you see what that does? Okay, we want to try to avoid the creasing, which may be not possible because of how much we're bending it, but it's still going to look good. But you want it to kind of pop out like that. Okay, so let's continue on here. Very easy. Oh, be careful on the flowers here too, as you're doing that. Okay, and then I'm going to take this dowel. Make sure you're using a nice thick dowel for this, and then take and just kind of very gently wrap the base of it, and kind of hold it like this, and just press it up against that dowel. Okay, you can see how that curves, and I can accentuate the tip of this too by just kind of curling it up against the dowel like that. Okay, you can play with this however you want. I really want the flower to look nice and open. Okay, so I'm just going to, there we go, just like that. Okay, there we go. So we just have a couple more to go, and then we just need to put a handle in this thing. Let's start by just kind of working the top, loosening those fibers a little bit, trying to avoid creasing it. Looks like it kind of helps to go with various angles to loosen up those fibers, and then just work your way down. Yeah, it's so much better. You can feel it loosening up as you go. Okay, now I'm going to go right from the base here and just kind of wrap that around the dowel very gently. That was a little bit too high there. Just very gently wrap it around the dowel right at the base, like that. And there you go. It's opening up nicely. Okay, and then finally, our last one here, starting at the top. So I'm grabbing it, curling it back, and running the dowel through. And I feel like I'm increasing how much I curl it back each time. And that's just really tugging at those fibers and loosening them up. There we go. Okay, and then going down to the base, we'll take that and just very gently wrap that down. Okay, there we go. All right. so now you can go around and just try to get everything to be as uniform as possible. And actually, you know what? Now that I think about it, just think about what I just said. How often do you see a uniform flower in nature? I mean, I know they have like shows where people show off how perfect their flowers are, but when's the last time you saw like a completely perfect flower in nature? You really don't. Okay, so I think I'm very happy with that. And the cool thing is too, well, we're not quite ready for that yet, but we're gonna fill this in with the grass, and it's gonna come up. And if you have any creases like I do, they'll mostly be hidden, so I'm not overly concerned about it. It's still gonna look great once we fill it up. But anyway, we need to put a handle together here. And the way this is gonna work is, you can see it's made up of these two pieces, and we're gonna join these two pieces together right here at this point here, like that. Okay, and then we're gonna have two individual little leaves that are gonna cover this up. So it almost looks like there's just two little leaves coming up, okay, as the handle. A really cool little concept there. All right, so before we do that though, we do wanna train this. So I'm gonna start at the base, and I've got the handle between my fingers and the dowel. I'm gonna go 90 degrees, and I'm just gonna run it through. So hopefully we end up with something like that. Same thing here, 90 degrees, run the dowel through, end up with something like that. And now we're gonna connect these two sections together. Okay, so go ahead and place the handle like I have it right now. Okay, let's flip it over so we can kind of see what we're doing. And I'm just gonna flip this over like this. And what we need to do is we need to apply glue to this entire thing here up to about this point here. Okay, we don't actually even need to go that far, but I'm gonna put glue on here like this, cover that up as well, and I'm gonna stop right about there. I'm gonna make sure that I get this glue out to the very edge here. Okay, and then here, I'm just gonna put glue here, and just make sure that I get the glue all the way out to the edge there. And then we can go ahead and join these two sections by using that little leaf as our guide there. Like that, and like that, there we go. And then as we're pressing down, we want to kind of give that a little bit of a curve. Just make sure that you're folding it and bending it to maintain the curvature that we created when we trained it, because otherwise it may try to dry kind of flat, and we don't want that. We want to avoid that. We want to keep this thing as round as possible. And I just noticed here that I need to kind of clean that up a little bit. I've got a little gap there. So I'm just gonna grab a scrap piece of paper and just get a little bit of glue right in this little area that's not sitting completely flat. And press that down. Just hold that. And there may be a little bit of separation, because as you go to curve it, it will want to kind of fight you a little bit, and that's okay, as long as you have about that kind of a curve. Because when we put it in here, yep, that looks great. A little tricky, but not impossible at all. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to glue these guys into place, just like that. And again, while we're doing that, we're gonna do it while it's curved. Okay, so let's go ahead and apply our glue to our first little leaf. Make sure you get that glue out to the edge, all the way to the bottom as well, along the edge. And of course, the glue decides to clog up. Not a good time there, mister. Okay, oops. Let's match that up with the point. Bring that down all the way, match up the hole like that. And again, keep it angled. Keep it like this, because that's how it's going to dry. If we try to glue this down flat and then try to angle it, it's going to crack apart and it will not be seamless. It'll look like a mess, like a nice hot mess. We don't want that. You want it to look nice and crisp. There we go, look at that. Okay, very happy with that. Looks good, beautiful. Okay, how about that? Perfect. All right, maintaining that shape, that's what we wanted. Let's go ahead and apply our glue to the last little leaf here, and we're pretty much golden. This one I don't think we really need to train. It's gonna just kind of assume the shape of the other piece, but go ahead and just make sure you line that up. Okay, bring it down, all the way down to the hole, and maintain that curve and hold it. And kind of check your work, make sure it's all nice and flush, all the way up and down. Okay, look at that, beautiful little handle. And now we're actually gonna put this in on the inside, like that. So let's grab our brads, and we're gonna put the, well, don't forget about the flower. I'm gonna poke this through the flower first. Look at that, that's cute. And it's gonna go through the side where the little hole is. Okay, and then we're gonna take the hole on the handle, feed that through one side, and then spread the brad apart. Just like that. And that's gonna go in there. Let's grab our other brad, poke it through the flower, pop it through the side. You can actually line that hole. If you can line that hole up, you can just get it all done in one fell swoop. And spread that brad apart. Sometimes when they paint the brads, they kind of get stuck together. There we go. Perfect. And there you have it. Okay. Very pretty little basket. And of course, at this point, it's ready for some grass shred. Let's see what that'll look like once we actually get that all filled in. Pull some of that out. Might go with a different color. I'm not sure yet. But let's really fill that up. Pop it in there. It's okay if a little bit's kind of wacky and wild. And there you have your pretty little flower basket ready to go. So anyway, it's gonna do it. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please visit us on YouTube and hit that subscribe button. While you're there, make sure you hit the little bell so you get notifications anytime we release a new product, whether it be paid or free. And if you make this or anything from our new bundle, I'd love to see it, and so would the rest of our community. So head over to your Facebook and do a search for Dreaming Tree Official. That's where you'll find myself and over 40,000 other dreamers that inspire us daily. So hope you had a good time, and as always, I look forward to crafting with you again. Hey, thanks for crafting along with me. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, check out some of our other videos, and also please consider hitting that subscribe button. And don't forget to visit our site and check out our free SVG section, where we have over 140 free SVG files complete with assembly videos. I look forward to crafting with you soon.